So now let's discuss some incubation systems. And we are going to have two types of incubators. We're going to have a multi-stage, and a single stage. A multi-stage incubator is usually filled with eggs of 6 different embryonic ages, and temperature, humidity, and ventilation are set at a fixed point throughout the whole incubation period. Some of the advantages of a multi-stage incubator are its simplicity, both with respect to the control system of the incubator as well as with the management of the incubation. And also they are very energy efficiency, because you can use the heat produced for some eggs to increase the temperatures of other eggs. A single stage incubator. A single stage means that all the eggs within an incubator are set together, so at the same time. All eggs are at the same embryonic stage. And some of the advantages of the single stage incubators are that you can adjust temperature, humidity, and ventilation points, set points according to the needs of the embryo. And this can lead to, or can possibly lead to, improved hatchability and chick quality. Also, there could be an improvement in biosecurity, because because these systems are all in or all out systems. So the incubator can be easily cleaned, disinfected, and maintained after hatching each batch of eggs. It can be more flexible if the amount of hatching eggs is not constant for each setting. So that's another advantage of the single stage incubator. So the ventilation in this incubator is very important too, because the ventilation is going to help to replace the air inside the incubator with fresh air. And the ventilation system ensures oxygen supply and removes carbon dioxide, moisture, and heat from those developing embryos. And the vents allowed air exchange throughout the incubation and control the degree of ventilation within the incubator. So, but you need to pay a lot of attention about to the rate of ventilation, because if you are under ventilating, you can have issues with a low oxygen and high relative humidity. If you do over ventilation, then your risk is to have a low humidity, and it's going to be more difficult to control the temperature inside the incubator. So, one thing that we need to remember is that at the beginning of the incubation period, embryos use little oxygen and produce a little carbon dioxide. And as the incubation progresses, the embryos will need more oxygen, and then they are going to be producing more carbon dioxide and heat. So the need for oxygen rapidly increased about 2/3 of the way into the incubation periods. So proper ventilation is essential prior to hatch, because underventilating can cause the embryos to die because they are not getting enough oxygen. And overventilation can also reduce the humidity too much and delay or reduce hatchability. And hopefully, this graph helps me out to convey, the message that I was trying to convey in the previous slide. And here you can see that from 1 to 11 days, the embryos are not going to be producing a lot of heat, so they will need heat. However, after 11 days, the embryo is going to be producing more heat, so heat needs to be dissipated, um, and ventilation should be increased. So in this graph you can see the heat production, and This helps you out to define, when ventilation needs to be increased. Turning is also very important. I don't know how many of you have had the opportunity to see a broody hen, but if you pay attention, the mother hen is going to turn the eggs periodically beneath her. And what this does, it helps to keep the yolk centered within the white. And poorly turning will cause the yolk to stick to the shell membrane, causing embryonic death. So turning is very important, particularly during the first week. So there are gonna be, if you are working in a commercial hatchery, you are gonna be using, automatic egg turning devices, and the turning can be done every hour. However, let's say if you are producing, backyard chicks, then you might be doing, some manual egg turning, and this is very important to do, like that egg turning 3 to 5 times per day. And this is highly important during the first week of incubation. And what I have seen that people does is like, they mark the eggs with a letter X or with a letter O. And then when they turn the eggs, then they know, like if all the eggs are gonna be with X, then when you turn it, then all the eggs they are gonna have an O on the top. So just marking the eggs helps you out to know if you forgot to turn a particular egg or not. It is important to remember to stop turning eggs 3 days before hatch to give embryo time to get oriented and begin breaking out of their shells. And I told you that, like around 18 days, the eggs are going to be transferred from the incubators to the hatchers. So towards the end of the incubation, eggs can be vaccinated in ovo. As you can see here, the in ovo vaccination, basically the machine touches the eggs, and if there is an egg that is cold, that means that there is no an embryo that is being developed inside the egg. So the cold eggs are removed, and this helps because this reduces the problems with contaminations in the hatchers. But the eggs that have like a live embryo in it, then a vaccine is how can I say, a vaccine is applied uh, to the amnion. Also, there is some research about like in ovo nutrition, and the idea here is like, as you can see, like those two larvae in the middle, they are genetically identical, but the larvae on the left receive more royal jelly, and then it becomes a queen. The larvae on the right receives less royal jelly, and then becomes a worker bee. So the idea here is like there are some influence of early nutrition on the development of the animals. Also, if the hatchery is done, well, the hatcheries can use no vaccination, or they can also use a spray vaccination after the chicks hatches at 21 days of age. So moving on to, after transfer, moving on to the hatchers, the optimal temperature will be, 0.5 to 1 Fahrenheit colder, or in Celsius will be from 0.3 to 0.5 than the temperature in the incubators, with a relative humidity around 10% higher. So during the hatch, it's important to restrict ventilation to raise the humidity and prevent the shell membranes from drying out. After about half of the eggs have hatched, you can increase ventilation and reduce the temperature to compensate for the heat generated by the hatching activity. However, it's important to avoid opening the incubator during hatch to prevent a reduction in relative humidity. Then peeping typically starts 1 to 2 days before the end of hatch. And then there are going to be two types: the internal peeping, which occurs when the embryo breaks into the air cell, and begins to breathe using the lungs. And then we have the external peeping, which occurs when the embryo breaks to the shell. And chicks typically hatch within 24 hours after peeping has started. Then, like the chicks that were not vaccinated with Inovo, then they can be vaccinated with a spray cabinet, as you can see in this picture. And vaccines are mixed in water and sprayed with droplets of around 100 to 150 microns. And then through pruning, the pruning optimizes the vaccine's uptake. So it's important to leave chicks in boxes for around 10 minutes so they can preen to each other. So chick quality is very important too. High or low temperature during incubation will influence a hatching window and the hatchability rate. So a late hatch will be an indication that the incubation temperature is too low. So as you can see in the picture on the right, chicks will have some unhealed navels. They can have some issues with crooked toes, thin legs, and slower growth rates. They can be weak with difficulties to eat and drink. And if you have an early hatch, then that will be an indication that the temperature was higher than normal and the chicks are gonna emerge early. So the chicks could be smaller, and then they could have some issues with splay legs and difficulties to walk. In addition, high temperatures can lead to poor utilization of the yolk, and the navel closed before the yolk sac has been fully absorbed. So when you do like the chick quality evaluation, the desired characteristics will be chicks that are strong, standing on its legs, fluffy, active but not relaxed, clean, soft, etc. And a strong, well-shaped chick will right itself within 3 seconds if placed on its back on a flat, non-slippery surface. So that could be one of evaluation that you can use to evaluate chick quality is the reflex. And Red Hawk suggests insufficient weight loss or overheating. So there is one score that can be used to evaluate chick quality. It is called the PASGAR score. And for each assessment, the chicks is gonna get a score of 0 or 1, and each fault is gonna be equal to 1. So the maximum score that the chicks can get is gonna be 10, and the minimum score is gonna be 5. So the attributes that are measured with this PASGAR score is reflex, navels, legs, beak, and belly. So the reflex includes chicks turn over rapidly. So if they wait more than 2 seconds to turn over, they are gonna get 1 point. So the navel needs to be clean, close, and dry. And a small swab of dry blood, a string of dry yolk, leaky or yolk outside abdominal cavity, that's gonna be 1 point. The legs needs to be strong and evenly colored. Red Hawks, swollen legs, then the chicks gets a point. And remember, 1 point is 1 fault. The beak, normal color, nostril, beak, and comb. Blood, a red dot, dirty nostril, or dirty beak, then that chicks get 1 point. And then the belly needs to be soft and smooth. If the belly is hard, and has tense skin, then that's 1 point. And here's how you can score the chicks. So you can see here in this table there is a chick 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then you can see like the 5 different attributes. So here the total average of these 7 birds was 61. So when you divided 61 divided by 7, the average pass guard score in each chick is 8.7. So you can also see, if there are some problems. So for example, you can see that the majority of the chicks have problems with the navels. 4 out of the 7 chicks, which represents 57%. So when there are problems with navels, that will be an indication of higher temperatures at the end of the incubation. And another reason could be chill or cool during processing, or insufficient ventilation or high CO2 levels. So the nice thing about when you do these evaluations is that it can also help you to identify some issues during the incubation and hatching process. And let's remember that unfortunately, not all incubated eggs will hatch. So when troubleshooting in the hatchery, an accurate account of where loss is occurring is necessary so that an action can be taken to reduce future losses. So there are several key performance indicators that can provide useful information to solve issues and optimize your hatchery protocols and settings. So some examples of KPIs or key performance indicators are going to be hatch of fertile, eggshell temperature, egg moisture loss, hatch window, chick local temperature, etc. So the idea here is that you need to develop your KPIs, and then that way you can it will help you to compare your current batch with previous batches, and that way you can see if you did it right or there was something that went wrong. So then chicks gotta go to the farm. So chicks holding and transportation is very important. Blue lights or lower light intensity will reduce chicks' stress. The temperatures in boxes should be maintained around 32 Celsius degrees. And on arrival to the farm, face the vehicle into the prevailing wind to prevent a wind chill of the chicks during unloading. Also, it is important to only unload the trolleys of chicks to meet the pace of the staff. You don't want trolleys of chicks waiting on the concrete pads outside of the house, particularly, if the temperature outside is windy and cold. Then just briefly moving to brooding, I told you that this we will discuss it in the following presentation, but chick survival and overall performance and health is dependent on how quickly they adjust to the farm. So we want to reduce, that stress from the hatchery to the farm. That will help the chicks to get used to faster to the farm conditions. So growers need to spend more time with newly hatched chicks to make sure that they are comfortable and have access to feed and water. So if there are some issues with brooding, those issues could be irreversible. And there is one indicator that we always follow, which is like the 7 days body weight. And I'm going to talk more about this in the next presentation. But if you have 1 gram extra at 7 days, that could represent between 7 to 10 grams extras at processing. And brooding is similar for all type of birds and type of productions. It's going to be very similar in layers, breeders, and broilers. And it is important to pay attention to the brooding temperature. So um, before the chicks arrive, you need to make sure that all the heat sources are working properly, and you need to maintain a temperature of 32 Celsius degrees at the floor during the first night, and then slowly decrease the temperature by around 2.5 Celsius degrees per week. And the brooding area should be light and airy without draft and have low levels of ammonia. The relative humidity should be between 60 to 70%. And if we have like low humidity, that can create problems with dehydration of the birds and also with dustiness inside the house. However, if the level of moisture or the relative humidity is too high, then that can lead to poor bird health and can have like some issues with, like litter quality, food pad dermatitis, etc. It is also important to check birds often to make sure they are comfortable. Some key points of this second part is that hatchery requires good planning to assist and maximize uniform embryonic development. Optimum bird performance starts way before the chicks arrive at the farm, and brooding is important to allow birds to start with the right food and to have a healthy and productive life. Thank you very much, and I will be happy to answer any questions that you might have.